Since 1927, Time magazine has produced a yearly article featuring their Person of the Year. Originally Man of the Year, the idea has expanded over time to include not just people, but also ideas, groups, and objects. It's not always a statement of praise, by the way. The criteria of honor in this case is for better or for worse, having done the most to influence the events of the year. Both Stalin and Hitler received this award, as did Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. In the past, honorees have often included the President of the United States of America, international leaders such as Queen Elizabeth, and peacemakers like Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat. Business moguls and billionaires like Jeff Bezos and Ted Turner, Mark Zuckerberg, and Elon Musk have all received the title. And it has also included the endangered earth, whistleblowers, protesters, you was actually content creators on the internet, and the computer. In 2007, Vladimir Putin received the title. And in this year, 2022, it was Volodymyr Zelensky, president of Ukraine, and the spirit of Ukraine. Seeing Volodymyr's face in a message from a friend who sent it to me with a celebratory text of "Resistance fist for the nice Jewish boy" brought me back to the memories I have from early 2014 and the trip to Ukraine that I never took. In the first year of rabbinical school, while we study in Jerusalem, it's a long-standing tradition for rabbinical students to travel on Passover to serve isolated communities in countries that were once part of the Soviet Union. We call this the FSU Passover trip, and we often go to Ukraine, to Belarus, to Lithuania, and occasionally Russia. I'm not sure if you remember, but in 2013, the opening salvos of this current war broke out. Russia annexed Crimea. The Ukrainian government transitioned from a pro-Russian to pro-Western choice, and there was armed conflict between Russian and Ukrainian forces as sections of Ukraine were systematically invaded and seized by Russia. As we watched from Jerusalem, holding tickets to visit Jewish communities in Kyiv and its surrounding communities, our security person informed us that there was absolutely no way that they would allow us to go into an active war zone, nor would we be rewarding Russia for its behavior and sending our students there. So instead, all of us were shuttled off to the country of Belarus, which at the time was theoretically neutral. These isolated FSU communities, which survived the Soviet regime, are a fascinating, unique section of our Jewish people. They know they are Jewish because the Soviets would never let them forget it, even as they stripped away their right to practice, observe, and learn about that Judaism. On Passover, our holiday of liberation, it has become of a supreme importance to celebrate it. And an honored part of the visiting student's role is to be the matzah mule, carrying cases of matzah from Israel to rural, disconnected sections of Eastern Europe that can't get it any other way. And due to your often packed schedule, these students arrive throughout the holiday of Passover, and when they arrive, that is when Seder arrives as well. I know that in my time, I had a first night Seder, and a second night Seder, and a third, and a fourth, and a fifth as well. Belarus was the closest that I physically ever got to Ukraine. But like so many of us, and as accurately captured by Time magazine, this year was one where we have all been impacted by the tragedy of the war there, and by the resilience of its people, and the courage of its leader. And as I was looking through the list of Time's Person of the Year, I could not help but notice the twinning of Volodymyr and Vladimir, of Putin and Zelensky, who have both made such an impact on the world, one with their power, and the other with their powerful refusal to bow. This week, of course, we are reading about a different pair of twins, a different set of adversaries, Jacob and Esau. They've been in conflict, at war really, from the very moment of their birth. And this time, for the very first time in decades, we read about their face-to-face meeting. Jacob arrives with his family, Esau with 400 fighting men, and it's unclear what's going to happen. Will this be a time of blood or a time of blessing? And Esau runs and embraces his brother and kisses him, and together they weep. The commentaries are very rich on this section, and earlier in the week I taught about the importance of the word vayishkehu, and kiss, and how it's unique in our Tanakh, how it has a marking above each and every letter, like a great secret is hidden there. And I really hope that tomorrow morning when you join us for Shabbat services, during the Torah service, you'll have a chance to take a look at it and notice. But tonight, I want to talk about a different teaching and a different element of this reunification. The great 19th century rabbi, Samson Raphael Hirsch, does not focus on the kiss. He says that kisses can be insincere, kisses can be superficial. But weeping, he writes, an outburst of tears is a very strong presumption of sincerity. And he writes, here Esau reveals his Abrahamic origin and shows himself as not merely a cruel hunter. Otherwise, how could he have reached such a leading position in the development of humankind? The sword alone, brute force, cannot accomplish this. Esau gradually relinquishes his sword and feels the cords of human love. And Jacob provides him with the opportunity to demonstrate his innate humanity. Hirsch beholds Esau, this classic antagonist, and says there must be something of Abraham and Isaac in him. There is no way that this brutal hunter, this witless goon, who sells his birthright for soup, who swears to kill his only kin, can possibly be this shallow. How can his descendants, who form and shape the world with such skill, come from a man with so few good traits? And so, argues Hirsch, we see here Esau relinquish the sword and genuinely embrace his Abrahamic lineage. His weeping is a sincere sign that we are seeing the transformation that all people and all nations are ultimately capable of. And so he concludes with this grand bit of wisdom. When the strong respect the strong, that is discretion. But when the strong fall upon the neck of the weak and throw away the blade, that is when we know that justice prevails. When the strong respect the strong, that's just politics. That's good business. It's common sense. But when the strong weep and embrace the weak, that's when we know we have hope in the future. When the war in Ukraine erupted this year, we saw plenty of discretion amongst the nations of the world because the strong have to respect the strong. Russia, with its nuclear arms and its international political veto and its allied proxy nations and the ability to starve Europe of gas, discretion, respect, wariness, these things come naturally. And so did the desire to weep with the weak, with the overwhelmed and seemingly powerless people of Ukraine. Because how could they stand up to this titan? But today we see a very different reality. As Ukraine resists Russia, as their military and partisan forces push Russian troops back, as cities and districts and regions are reclaimed for Ukrainian sovereignty, we see that Russia should have respected Ukrainian determination, Ukrainian resilience. They should have been wary of Ukrainian strength. And while Russian resistance to the war from its people began in moral objection, we see that now the growing disinterest in continued conflict is coming from this element, that the strong need to respect the strong. And so we thank God for that deep well of strength in the Ukrainian people. And even as we are grateful for that strength, we can still pray for a world that is not built on strength alone. Because respecting others because they can harm you respecting others because they can resist you, is not what builds and brings the world that God has asked us for. What brings about a true healing of the world is ultimately going to be radical empathy, the ability for the strong to see themselves in the weak and to throw away that weapon. For those who have, to love those who have not, and to embrace them and to lift them. And for all of the children of Abraham to look at each other and, despite years of conflict, be willing to set aside their mutual hurt, their mutual betrayals, so that they can live together in peace. Now, to my best knowledge, God isn't on the editorial team of Time magazine, so perhaps this prayer is misdirected. But my prayer for next year is this: may whomever or whatever influences the events of the year in 2023 be one who does not do so by the sword or by good, reasonable political discretion, who does not do so because the strong must respect the strong, but someone who changes the world and transforms the world through empathy and through kindness, through mercy and through faith. Olam chesed yibaneh, a world of kindness we can build. Ken yehi ratzon, may this be your will, O God. Shabbat shalom.